Hello and welcome everyone to the October Quest session with Tricia Conyers, the 9 dimensions of engagement. I'm so very excited to see you all here. Just a few housekeeping things before I turn it over to our special guest. We ask that you turn your cameras on to create a sense of community. If you have low bandwidth, if you're eating or caring for someone in the background or need to step away, we understand if you need to keep your camera off. The session will be recorded and the link will be shared with those who are signed up for Tech Host Academy. So welcome as our special guest for this live event. If you want to continue with us at Tech Host Academy, we are a 6-month program. We have 10 pre-recorded lessons that'll get you started as a tech host. And then we have 2 live sessions, monthly sessions every single month where we bring in a special guest or I give a deep dive lesson into what it means to be a tech host and answer all of your questions. So to ensure that we have this clean recording for those who will be watching later, I ask that you please keep yourself muted. And I have a wonderful tech host with me here, Mary. If you could just give us a wave, Mary. She's here to help you. If you have any questions or any technical issues, you are welcome to directly text her, but I do want to ask everyone to take a look at the chat really quick. If you have any questions, I'm going to ask you to set your to everyone and then type 3 question marks to ask your question. That gives me a visual cue that you have a question and I'll be moderating for Tricia today. All right, any questions from the audience before we begin? And we will have some time after for some Q&A as well. I like to do what Brian says is give that 2-sip pause in case anyone has a question. And I like to keep that on mute so that nobody can hear me slurping. So if you haven't already figured this out, I like to teach both on the dance floor and the balcony level. And many of you are coming in here as facilitators, trainers, presenters, or tech hosts, so you can learn that way. But first, I'd love to introduce Tricia. This is going to be so exciting. She is committed to helping change faster, meet better, learn smarter, and communicate differently. She's an architect for change, builds organizational change capacity and capability, and shapes many learning cultures. Now, Tricia is the founder of Island Inspirations. And prior to this role, Tricia was the vice president of learning and development for a change consultancy in Houston, Texas. She has over 25 years of change as being a change agent, trainer, facilitator, and coach. And more recently, she has ventured into podcasting. She co-hosts a show entitled Every Little Model that features models we can use to help us thrive in organizational life. She is an INIFAC certified master facilitator and certified virtual facilitator. She's a certified Lego Serious Play facilitator, a 21 Toys Empathy Toy facilitator, and a Time to Think facilitator. And I could probably list about 10 more things that I know Tricia is excellent at. And as a change advocate, she supports teams to achieve results and breakthroughs in day-to-day performance and shifts in behaviors and beliefs. As a leader, Tricia strives to shape interactions that show heart and are human and inspire hope. She is passionate about learning and unleashing the potential in others. Now, I have to warn you, she has a master's in engineering, so you're going to understand why she runs this podcast and why she's so great at this model. She holds a master's of arts and bachelor of arts with distinction from Cambridge University, England, and she makes her home with her husband, son, and bulldogs in Trinidad and enjoys traveling, Pilates, and photography. Have I missed anything, Tricia?
Gosh, no, that is a lot.
I know it's a mouthful, but I want people to know what they're getting into. This is going to be fantastic. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Heather, for that amazing introduction. That is certainly a mouthful. I appreciate you sharing that. I'm really excited to be here with you. Heather and I are friends and colleagues. I first met Heather many years ago when I reached out to her to learn some of her amazing lettering skills, which hopefully, I do her some justice in what you see behind me today. I'm really excited to be with you. So thank you, everybody, for joining. It's really wonderful to see all your faces here today. Thank you for joining. As we're getting started, if you would like to share your name and where you are today and what brought you to this session in the chat, that would be great. And as you are doing that in the chat, I will share just a little bit about how this came to be. I won't tell you any more about me because I think Heather told you so much about me that you don't need to know anymore. I am standing in very rainy Trinidad and Tobago today, and it has been raining quite a lot here. We are dealing with a storm that's brewing somewhere in the Atlantic, sort of coming our way. So if you hear loud crashes, that is not sound cues that I've asked for, but it's probably thunder if you hear that. So don't worry about it. And if you do hear my bulldogs run inside, they are afraid of the thunder, so they might make an appearance as well. So as Heather said, I do have 25 years in corporate with a boutique change agency. And over those years, I had many roles with them, from change agent to coaching leaders and other change agents, to learning designer, to VP of learning development. And as she said, I am a facilitator in quite a few different methodologies. I've trained in a few different methodologies. And why is that important? Well, why that's important for today is because as a change agent, the way that we activated, ignited, and kickstarted change with clients is by intervening through their meetings. And what we focused on in our meetings was trying to make those meetings effective. We focused on effectiveness. As a learning designer, I focused on designing meetings. And then later on, as I developed my facilitation experience, I focused mostly on engagement. And there was something that sort of came alive when you blended the effectiveness, the design, and the engagement to really transform the types of meetings or workshops that people had. But the engagement side is what we're here to explore today. And so I'm seeing in chat that people are, looking for ways to step up their game on engagement. Excellent. Always looking for ways to engage others. Yeah, so different techniques for engaging people. Just curious about this idea. So it's great to see that in chat, and you're in the right place if that's why you come, because that's what we're going to be talking about today. In fact, my intent today is to demystify a bit about engagement, to unpack it and to kind of reveal exactly where you can focus and intervene to boost engagement in sessions. And when I talk about a session, I'm talking about a meeting, a workshop, an event. You can even apply some of the practices in one-on-one meetings and things like that. If that sounds interesting to you, drop me a yes in the chat. Let me see if we're kind of all in the right place. Yay, good, big yeses, lovely. Yes, 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 I love it. Thank you, beautiful. So we're going to be together for, probably just shy of 2 hours. Right? We've started already. I hope you'll stay till the end. We will be doing Q&A at the end, and we have a lot of resources and some great offers to offer you today. During our time today, we're going to be using chat. Like you see, we're using chat quite a lot. We are going to have one breakout session, just so you know, or a chance for you to kind of practice and play with some of the model that I'm going to share with you. And we'll be using a shared Google Doc when we do that. I'll also be sharing some slides during our session. If for any reason you have difficulty, accessing any of those things, whether it's breakout groups or anything like that, please let either Heather or Mary know, and we will try to make arrangements to see how we can, make things work for you, kind of hack it, as we say. So before I dive into more about engagement, I want to tell you what I love about tech hosting and why I kind of, came to Heather with this idea. In my work online, in online sessions, I have been a dedicated tech host to others, facilitators, and to other presenters. I have been a facilitator with someone in the role as tech host, and I've been both at the same time. And both is really hard. There is a lot to do when you're trying to do both, right? If anyone has tried to play that role of being both the tech host and the facilitator or the presenter and speaker, tell me, in chat when you've been that, and tell me what's hard about it. When you have a dedicated tech host, it's really easy. It makes things easy for presenters and facilitators and speakers, right? It removes distractions, allows focus, gives confidence that everything's in order, gives support to the person who's presenting. Tech hosts do a great job in educating others. And tech hosts really know the ins and outs sometimes of tech, right? And at the same time, tech host is not about tech. Tech hosting is not about tech. Because tech can be hacked. We can be creative. We're really creative people, and we can kind of hack tech to do what we are hoping to achieve. So it's not really about the tech, but it's about knowing what the intent is and what we're trying to achieve. As Heather says, it's about the effectiveness, the equity, and the engagement, right? It's about those three things. And today we're focused on the engagement side of that. So let's take a couple of minutes to just connect with what we mean by the topic of engagement. I would love for you to grab a piece of paper. It can be as small as a Post-it note or as big as a flip chart, if you so desire. Just grab a piece of paper in front of you and divide it into four quadrants, so down the middle, either way. And let's take a breath and sort of just connect with the topic of engagement. We're going to do a very short visualization exercise. Sort of tap in to what it means to be part of a session that is really engaging. Does everybody have their piece of paper? Give me a thumbs up, either a virtual one or a real one. Perfect, love it. I see you all there. Okay. So I want you to visualize yourself running or supporting a highly engaging online session, right? You're well into your session and you can just feel the energy in the room, the virtual room. There's a participation and a quality of work that's emerging from the group that's sort of unlike anything you've experienced in a previous session or anything that you've been part of before. There's a hum of excitement, a kind of a buzz, a commitment, and an involvement that you're seeing that's just hard to put words to. So imagine yourself in that situation. Now, on your piece of paper, in one of your four quadrants, I want you to write at this present moment in that session, what are you doing? And I'm just going to give us 20 seconds on the clock to do that. So what are you doing right now in that highly engaging session? That session where, it's sort of just bursting. You can feel the hum of the energy. You can feel the participation, the involvement, the new ideas, the thinking coming alive from people. What are you doing? You could be in the role of a facilitator or a tech host, whatever role you see yourself in that session. So imagine yourself. Okay.
Time's already.
Sorry, Heather?
I said time is already up.
Oh, got it.
Yeah.
Okay. So in the next quadrant, I want you to imagine what are some of the other things that you've been doing since the session started? So since the session started, what other types of activities and things have you been doing? So 20 seconds, to write a few notes down. What other things have you been doing since the session started? Now, in the third quadrant, what are the participants doing? What are they saying? What are they feeling? What are they doing? What might they be hearing? What might they be seeing, smelling, all those things? What are they doing and what are they feeling? And in the last quadrant, sort of level up and look upon the group and see what are the signs that you are sensing and that you are seeing and that you are hearing and feeling that tells you that people are engaged. What are the cues that you're getting that's telling you that people are really engaged? Now flip your piece of paper over and reflect on that. And I want you to write down 1 or 2 sentences that say, why is that type of engagement important? Why is it important that people reach that level of engagement? Why is that important? I give you 20 seconds. So write down just 1 or 2 sentences that say why that's important. Now I want you to look at the answer that you just wrote down, the 1 or 2 sentences, and I want you to dig in even deeper. Now ask yourself, why what you wrote down? Why is that 1 or 2 sentences that you wrote down? Why is that important? So dig deeper into it. Look for more. Why is that sentence that you wrote down? Why is that important? And again, 20 seconds. Okay, and we're going to do it one last time. You know the drill. Look at the 1 or 2 sentences you just wrote down. And again, dig a bit deeper and ask yourself, why is that second thing that you wrote down? Why is that really important? So just dig one more time and see what you come up with. 20 seconds to see what you come up with in this last round. And when you're done, share that sentence, that last sentence that you have, share it in the chat. And let's see what we came up with. So why is engagement important? Engagement is so important because when we bring people together in meetings, right, they give us the gift of their time. And I think in return of giving us the gift of their time, which is so precious, is that we need to make it an environment where they can really do their best, right? Exactly. People's time are valuable. We want to do our best work. We want to add value. We want to make a difference. We want to make the world a better place. We want to boost learning and grow and have self-confidence. That's what we want to get out of our time sessions. You know, we only have limited time. All these beautiful things that you guys are saying here. We want to push past the fear. The fear does get easier the more that we do it. We want to build community and have connection between people. We want to connect to purpose. Exactly. People want to be part of something meaningful. They want to be heard and they want to be seen. And that's why engagement is so important, right? That's why we need to be able to create environments where we can get people to that level of engagement. So you really are, you're in the right place. And I love these beautiful ideas that you've been sharing with me here in the chat. For today, in particular, what we're going to do is we're going to explore engagement. And we are particularly going to explore engagement and how tech hosts play a role in ensuring that sessions are engaging. By the end of our session today, we're going to have a list of some high impact activities that people have done, and we're going to have connected that back to the dimensions of engagement. Also going to be sharing with you some other resources, one of which is a document where we compile the different dimensions of engagement and specific things that tech hosts can do to boost that dimension of engagement in different sessions. So there's lots of resources that we're going to be sharing as well. Everybody still doing okay? Yeah, so far so good? Wonderful. All right, so I'm going to share my screen with a few slides, and I'm going to share a little bit about the content behind the model. And if you've been following along with Heather's amazing post on social media over the last couple of days, you've seen this model kind of, popping up in lots of different places, the 9 dimensions of the model. 9 dimensions of engagement, sorry. I'm going to tell you a bit more about that as much as I can and kind of keep it short and sweet so that you get a chance to practice and play with it as well. So just bear with me while I share my screen. Is that okay? Is everyone able to see the screen and the slides? Perfect. I see some thumbs up. Wonderful. Okay. And let me just get to the right place. Okay, hold on. My slides don't seem to be moving. There we go. Okay. So as we all know, 2 years ago, COVID disrupted our world. It came upon us with a bang, and it sent many people who were working in person and in organizations into an online space. A lot of people had never worked and engaged in that space before. Suddenly, we were all online. And hours after hours of Zoom and team meetings, the internet was buzzing with comments about Zoom fatigue and disengaging online meetings. And this question about how do I make online meetings engaging was popping up sort of everywhere. In reality, honestly, I think the move to online amplified a lot of the engagement challenges that we had when we were in person. Maybe they were slightly easier to deal with when we were in person, and they were a little more difficult when it moved online. Because in essence, a lot of what we deal with disengagement, as you see here, like on this scale, is sometimes we deal with distractions, which put people into a space of being disengaged. They're focused on other things, or you deal with bad behaviors. All of those things were present when we had in-person sessions, but they became harder to deal with when we moved online, for example. So part of what I decided to do is take this facilitation experience that I had, where we focused so heavily on creating engaging sessions, and try and break that down into something that was discrete, usable, and repeatable for people. And that's where this model of the 9 dimensions of engagement came from. Hopefully this picture looks a little bit like a pinwheel. That toy that we all had, some of us when we were kids, that sort of pinwheel you stand, the wind catches it and creates momentum and it spins around. It's intended to look a little bit like that, because the idea is there are these 9 different dimensions or petals in this pinwheel. And the more that we kind of blow on different petals in there, we can create the momentum of the engagement momentum and have it going around. But being tuned in to what we're doing is a really important way to create engagement. Behind each one of these petals, there's a scale that sort of says from one end to the next. And there are a number of sort of gradations or variations or moves that you can make along that scale to emphasize the dimension. I'm not going to be able to go through all of them here today, but I am going to show you a few of them, and I am going to talk about just really quickly about each of the different dimensions. If you're interested to learn more about what's behind each one, I'll tell you where you can do that at the end as well. So while I'm walking through each of the different dimensions, I don't want you to just sit and listen. I want you to think about it. So what I want you to do is, as I'm going through each of the different dimensions, Heather will drop the dimension name in the chat. And what I want you to do is share your thoughts about how tech hosts bring that dimension alive in each of the different sessions, okay? So be thinking about that as I'm walking through each of the different dimensions. Got it? Yeah, cool. All right. So here we go. So the first dimension is group size. And group size is probably the most obvious and the easiest one to impact, right? The scale behind group size means varying the number of participants that work together. So it means working between small groups and large groups. This is actually one of the easiest ways to sort of boost engagement, is by moving things around and varying your group size. But we have some, sort of what maybe hesitations is the right word. We have some hesitation sometimes to doing this. Often in day-to-day meetings, we think like people have just come together to do something, and so we avoid actually moving into group sizes. We try and work all together at the same time. And in really large meetings, we sometimes think that it's too difficult to put people into group size, or it'll take too long, and so we avoid doing it. But one of the great things about group size, and here you can see the scale, on how you can move from individuals, people working alone, working in small pairs, working in triads, working in groups of 4 to like 6 or 7, and then working as a whole group or plenary, so from small to large. The great thing about working in group size is that it keeps people really focused. We live in this world of distraction, and when we move people in and out of group sizes, it actually asks them to get present and to focus in a conversation, for example. It's really hard to be distracted when you're in a pair with someone else, right? You kind of have to be present. You also recognize that when we gather in groups, there are multiple conversations going on. You know, those can be overt, and they can also be hidden conversations. So in a group of 4, there are multiple conversations happening between those 4 people, for example. And varying group size allows us to manage some of the complexity of the multiple conversations that happens. Changing group size changes our energy. Sometimes when we're working you know, in a big group for a long time, energy can get low, and moving into a small group can change that and boost it again. Or sometimes when you're coming off a very high action activity, people have so much energy and activity, what you want to do is actually tone that down just a bit. And so putting them to work in small groups is a great way of doing that as well. And really interestingly, actually purposefully moving from left to right when you're working in a group helps to build safety within the group. So if you start from the side of thinking individually and then moving into pairs and slowly making the groups bigger, that actually builds safety for people, and it allows the people that have quieter voices to enter the room. Often we just go straight into this open discussion, the whole group talking together, and that doesn't allow us to create that environment of safety. And safety is highly connected to engagement as well. Working in different group sizes as well improves collaboration. It improves the way we connect with people. There's so many benefits. Like I said, it's one of the easiest things that we can do. Great. So the next dimension would be thinking styles or thinking structures. In this dimension, what we do is we vary how we ask people to think. So we move between individual thinking to group thinking. And we move through steps like doing things like thinking pairs or triad dialogues or rounds, or maybe even circle sessions. They're different constructs to be able to ask people to think differently. Most people toggle from individual thinking to let's think together as a group. But actually thinking together as a group is really difficult to do well. And the most effective way to get there is, again, sort of by moving through the moves on this scale, for example. I'm going to speed this up just a bit so you guys can kind of touch on all of them. The next dimension would be participant involvement. And here what we do is we move between unidirectional participation and multi-directional participation. So in unidirectional participation, it's very one-way. So that's something like a presentation or one-way distribution of information. With simple techniques, you can shift this to involve others by asking them to do or capture something during presentations, for example. Don't forget to add to the chat any ideas you have about how tech hosts bring these dimensions alive during sessions. Then we have the dimension of energy fields. So energy fields, what we're doing is we're changing the energy of participants, moving between a calm energy and a chaotic energy. Knowing energy levels is really crucial. We tend to measure engagement by always looking for the sign of high action activities, but that doesn't work for everyone. And knowing how to flex energy and move energy from low to high is really important for engagement. And because as humans, we can't actually sustain one level of energy for very long periods of time. So here again, I'm showing you the kind of the scale behind that. So moving from calm to chaotic energy, you see the different colors of energy as you go along and what they mean. So from the calm side, you have energy that is the purple energy, which is the color of wisdom, insight, imagination, for example, all the way through to the mid-level of green, which is the color of harmony, service, and connection, all the way to red, which is the color of stimulation, strength, and action, and urgency. And you can see examples of the different types of things that you could do to generate each of those different energy fields. That's energy fields. Instruction complexity. This is where we change how instructions on tasks are given. And we can move between tightly controlled instructions to loosely crafted instructions. This is an easy one where it goes wrong. I personally find this one very challenging for me. You know, when you if you're unclear in instructions, it's the perfect way to cause confusion, and confusion causes disengagement. So for me, I always tend to err on the side of this scale, which is around more tightly controlled and layering or scaffolding instructions, especially when I'm working online with people, for example. Yes, Heather, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I just want to give an example of this that happened to me last week as a tech host, is that when I'm working with groups, especially in Mural, sometimes that can be a little bit more challenging than Miro or Padlet, some of these easier third-party collaboration tools. So I like to give 3 simple tips before I even share the link, so that when they go in there, they have those tips, they can do those things right away, they feel like they've succeeded, and then we can start, like you said, do more layered instructions as people go.
Yeah, that's a great example of like showcasing before
Mhm.
you even sort of invite people in or you give them the instructions. Sometimes that's a great one. Thank you. Lovely. Okay, and then we have challenge levels. So when we talk about challenge levels, what we're talking about changing the level of challenge that we give to participants, right? And we do that by shifting the combination of skills that they have and situations on which they focus. So what we're aiming for here is to get people in the flow zone. The flow zone is where engagement peaks for people, but it's not always obvious how to move groups there. So knowing how to flex between the learning zone, the discovery zone, the challenge zone is really important for us to generate engagement. Then we have the dimension of time and place. And in this scale, we're thinking about changing the combination of how people work, whether that's same time, same place, different time, same place, same time, different place, or different time, different place. So this is where the terminology around synchronous meetings and asynchronous meetings comes from, that variation and that flexing between how people work, whether it's same time, same place, or different time, same place. Not everything always has to happen in the same time, same place. And flexing outside of that is a great way to honor what people have going on in their life. It's also a great way to generate momentum and excitement before your sessions happen, so that you're creating energy and engagement by asking people to get involved in things before they even come to a session. So thinking about time and place is a great way to boost engagement as well. Then we have what we call the VARC modalities, and this is varying between different types of activities that people do. So people can do visual activities, they can have auditory activities, read-write activities, or kinesthetic activities. This is one where you can really get creative. And it's also really easy to default to what's been done before, right? So sometimes, like for an example of that is, if you're asking a group to do a breakout, the default way is just we'll ask for one member from each group to recap or to share the insights that they had. But you could change that up and you could ask them to build a model out of Play-Doh that, that shows their main insight rather than just auditory. So you can get creative, but we often just default to the ways that it's been done before. And we kind of have to push our boundaries a little bit there. Okay, and the last one is called Seasons of Creative Conversation. So what we're doing here is varying the type of conversation that we're asking people to have in sessions. So we can change the focus or the frame of a conversation by changing the type of the prompt that we give. We can give prompts that ask people to to visualize, for example. We can give prompts to ask people to tap into inspiration. We can ask people to have conversations that are reflective or maybe more objective, interpretational, or even action focused. You can be intentional about thinking about what type of conversation you want people to have. Okay. So those are the 9 dimensions of the model, the 9 dimensions of engagement. And Heather, I haven't been able to look at the chat as I've been going through this, but is there anything that's been coming through the chat that would be worth highlighting, that you could highlight for us?
Yeah, there were
Sorry to put you on the spot
No,
there.
no worries at all. I'm engaged, so I'm ready. So anyway, yeah, there were a couple under the instruction complexity. I think we understand that because it's probably a pretty great pain point for us as
Yeah.
facilitators, and because we know that as soon as technology goes bad, the whole session stops. But Lynn is saying, put the instructions in the chat so those who read it can also understand.
Yep.
That's really great for when people suffer from breakout amnesia. That's when they go into the breakout and then forget what they're supposed to do. How many times is that the most comfortable thing to say? And then Lisa is saying, demo what we're doing before they do it. That's right. So those kinesthetic learners can see, and the visual learners can see what's going to happen so that they can mirror the way. Yeah. So Karen is asking, not understanding why the examples for seasons weren't examples of modalities. Could you say more
Karen, can
about
you
that?
say a little more about that? Yeah.
Yes,
Instructions.
the examples you gave in the last part about seasons was visualizing, being reflective. I thought those would be more around modalities and varying activities. So I couldn't understand the difference
Yes.
between the two phases.
Yeah, so actually those examples about being visual or auditory were actually the VARC modalities. That was dimension 8. And the seasons of conversations were the types of conversations that you have. So like inspiring, and they're attached to the season. So like spring conversations, for example, are inspiring or imaginative conversations. Summer conversations are more practicing and objective conversations. Fall conversations tend to be more harvesting and celebrating. And then winter conversations tend to be more reflective and reconnective, for example. So that's why it's
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I really want to give everyone a chance to play with this a little bit, right? So what we're going to do at this point in time is we're going to put people into a breakout group. You're going to be in a pair, and we're going to share with you a document, a Google Doc where you can work. And I'm just going to show that to you so you can see what that looks like. So hopefully, is everyone seeing this Google document? It says tech host session group work doc at the top. Yeah, great. I see a thumbs up. So in a second, we're going to invite you into this document. The instructions are here. At the top, you have a table that has the 9 different dimensions that I've just showed you. And it also has the definition of those 9 dimensions, because I didn't want to ask you guys to remember all of that in the first, 20 minutes of meeting me. So it's there for you. And what I want you to do is think of a virtual session that you've hosted or attended where you felt it was highly engaging. Okay, so that's what I want you to be thinking of. For the first 2 minutes, each person can complete the 2 questions that you see here. So you'll see there's person 1 and person 2. And then you can spend a couple of minutes discussing the activity that you came up with and how that links back to these different dimensions. So what was present in that activity? Which dimensions were present in that activity? Okay, so you can do that for a few minutes. And the last couple of minutes before your breakout group ends, so in your last 5 minutes, I'd love for you to capture a few insights that you've had from doing the exercise. Okay, there are multiple pages in this document. So every 2 pages, it's repeated. So you can just claim a page by entering your names, you and your partner at the top, so you know where you're working. So just claim a page, and then you guys can work together in that document. Okay, is that clear? All my instructions clear?
Any questions so
Excellent.
far?
Yeah, and yeah, any questions so far? I'll stop sharing that, and then
And I've put them in the chat. I've put the instructions in the chat. You may need to scroll up. Excellent. It looks like Linda has a statement, but maybe also a question. These dimensions feel more like how we would design and plan an agenda as a facilitator. Tech hosts should be ready to how to support all the various ideas the facilitators have, right? Well, when I'm tech hosting, I'm supporting the facilitator's design unless they've also asked me to be a thought partner in the design agenda. Oh, I love it. You're getting ahead of us, Linda. This is really great. And that's what the document we're going to share later is going to be about, is we're giving you how those tech hosts do support facilitators. But in this particular exercise, this is going to be great about you discovering a little bit more about those dimensions, right, Tricia?
Yes, absolutely. And that's such a great reflection, Linda. Thank you so much for that. And we are, like Heather says, we are going to share a document that kind of says for each dimension, what are the things that tech hosts can do specifically to help boost that in sessions as well. Mary Beth, I think you had your hand up. Do you want to ask a question?
It just got posted, so thanks. I was wondering how we claim a page.
Oh, all right. Okay, cool. Yeah. So it looks like the link for the doc is there, and I see lots of people joining. So feel free to claim a page and write your name at the top with your partner. Heather or Mary are going to get us into groups of 2, and we're going to be there for about 15 minutes. Okay.
All right.
Hello.
I always find that people that come back before the grace period is over, it's either they're done or they have a push button finger.
Yeah. Exactly. trigger happy.
Oh, you're still muted. You're still muted, Jenny.
Yeah, it's so common to just hit return at the wrong moment, and it's like, oh, now I'm out of the breakout.
Yeah,
Sorry,
exactly.
Lisa.
Looks like we are. Welcome back, everyone. I'm going to talk a little bit about what happened behind the scenes while you were in the break, but after I turn it back over to Tricia.
Yeah, welcome back, everyone. That's really, I hope you enjoyed that exercise. What I'm going to do is I'm going to ask just for 1 or 2 volunteers to share some thoughts about the exercise. So to share, how did you find the exercise? Maybe one of the activities that you discussed and how that was connected to the dimensions, and a couple of your highlights or insights that you had. So while you're thinking about that, you can raise your hand. You can raise your Zoom hand if you would like to volunteer to share with us. And while you're reflecting on that, Heather's going to share some of the behind the scenes stuff that happened to us while you guys were busy in breakout groups. We were having all sorts of little things happening on this end. So we're going to share some of that as well, just for the fun of it. And then I will invite the volunteers to share. So you can think about it. And if you're interested in sharing with everyone, just raise your Zoom hand and we'll get to that after Heather tells us some behind the scenes stories.
So I just want to give you some behind the scenes stories. Just like I said earlier, I like to share what was happening on the dance floor and on the balcony. And I thought this was really funny. So first thing that happened is we realized that someone had gone in and highlighted the entire document, and we had this kind of a fright, right? So Tricia was like, oh no, I hope someone doesn't delete it all. And my first question was, do you have a backup plan? And I said, well, what would the backup plan be? To have another copy. And guess who had a copy of that document? Our tech host. So big shout out to Mary. Thank you so much for having the backup plan in place without even being asked. So whenever you're sharing a document, make sure that you've got a backup just in case. And then, of course, that all happened because it happened so quickly that it took me a few minutes to realize, and this is what I try to do as soon as people go into breakouts, especially with pairs. You know, sometimes we get a little scared, or we sometimes get kicked off and we don't actually make it to the breakout room. So I did a quick scroll in the breakout rooms and I saw someone was by themselves. And I saw that someone might have just left because they had their camera and their microphone off. And I saw them in a room with someone else by themselves. So I apologize to those 2 people that were by themselves for a moment or 2, but I did join those up right away. So that's probably the first thing you should do as a tech host in charge of breakouts is to quickly scroll through that breakout room to make sure, especially if they're in pairs, that if someone is by themselves, that they get joined up with someone else as soon as possible. Another thing that happened is we had someone join us in the middle of the breakout room. So before I brought them in, I just wanted to take a quick poll with Mary, our tech host, and of course, Tricia, our facilitator. We have someone in the breakout room. Now I can message them and welcome them, of course. And we have our 3 choices. We can either tell them to wait and that we will bring them in when the breakout session is over, or we can bring them in and ask them if they want to be put into a group, or they can just hang out with us. And they chose to hang out with us. So that's another thing, is be thinking about when someone comes in during a breakout room, what's your protocol? And if you don't have one, or if you haven't discussed that with the facilitator yet, as a tech host, that's something you might want to ask them first. So, and I think the nicest thing to do is just give them that human connection so that they don't drop off, and to bring them into the room and ask them. So yeah, so wonderful to have you all here. And I think we might have a volunteer.
Yay. Heather, would you be able to spotlight Len? And Len, could you unmute yourself? And please feel free, I'm dying to hear. Tell us all about it. How did you find the exercise? What was one of the activities you discussed, and how did that connect back to the dimensions? And what were some of the insights that you had?
So the activity was actually quite interesting, because I'm not really a tech host by profession. I'm a tech host by force of nature because of my job, right? I was kind of forced into it with the way COVID went. And that was doing strength finders facilitation through the military work that I'm at. And there was a lot of this whole experience here was interesting to look back at that and think about what went well, what didn't go well, and actually in the framework of the 9 dimensions, right? Like having that framework to kind of go through there and thinking back on that. It's been almost a year and a half now since I did it, but there were some really positive parts about it. The breakout rooms worked really well, and then explaining to people. And I remember just for myself was training myself on the tool. Like I'm always a big person when I'm giving a presentation is fine. If you can go to the room and log into the computer and get that experience before you actually start doing the actual job, it's always a good idea. At least for me, right? Practice before you play. And so getting used to the tool. Yeah. And so Karen and I actually talked a little bit about the dimensions and the energy. And then because of me and who I am, as Heather knows, I got lost in Karen being a calligraphist and her session, and I took her down a path as a rabbit hole. But I really enjoyed the thinking about even that, how the 9 dimensions were in and present in our breakout room, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. What were some of the insights that you had, or the reflections, even just from that?
I mean, the real insight for me was just the energy levels, you know, and aligning, or not aligning, but I guess labeling the experiences, the challenges, the successes, along with the 9 dimensions of engagement, right?
Yeah.
And then thinking, and the real insight for me was next time, because there's always a next time, having this to be able to do in real time, right? And thinking about it and practicing it and kind of meditating on it, so that when you're in that real moment and the wheels are falling off and you're changing the tire while the car's on fire, you don't see it, right? Never let them see you sweat, as they used to say.
Absolutely.
Cool.
Yeah, I love that reflection. Sort of, you know, one of the things with the 9 dimensions in terms of how I use them, I mean, like we were saying earlier today, I definitely use them in design of sessions, but I use them to reflect as well, in terms of, you know, when I think back about certain things, if it wasn't a great session, like what was missing, right? What did I try to get at, and what was missing? What could I have done instead? Which dimension could I have focused on instead to maybe boost engagement? And then the more and more that obviously I've played with the model, they become more real time for me as well. So I do think about like, okay, well, what's happening now, and what could I change in the next activity, or in the next thing that I'm going to ask people to do? Do I want to shift my instructions one way or the other, or something like that, right? So they definitely, I start off with them being intentional with them in the design, and then reflecting, but then they do become more real time as well the more you connect with them. That's great. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that. Anyone else would like to share? It would be great to hear from someone else. Catherine, right? Okay, let's see. Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, I wanted to share like an activity I did with the group. So we had like, the topic was group faces. I teach social workers, and they should talk about the faces and come up with their own ideas what to do in those group faces. And they could choose which face they wanted to work on. We prepared like videos or text on those faces, so they should watch or read as a group and then discuss that. And it also was important that every group face was chosen, so when they come back and share, so everybody knows like everything, and not like every group is working on different parts. And it happened that the like big group was too small, so that not every group face was chosen. So we also, as a trainer, me and my co-trainer, had to talk about one face, so that like the group activity was fulfilled in the end, and they knew everything. But that was like quite a ride and working, because we also knew what we wanted to do, and there was a lot of preparing beforehand to choose like the right videos and the right text, which are like not that long, so the timing is right in the group phases. And the groups could also choose how to present, to just write notes down in the Padlet or visualize stuff. They learned it from us before, and they chose very different styles of presenting, and that was like quite nice to do and to see. But it was a lot of preparing, but it worked well.
That's excellent. And as you were sort of sharing that, I heard you mention basically 4 different dimensions in that they were sort of playing up in that activity. I heard you talk about VARC modalities in terms of, being visual or auditory and using different activities that were on the VARC modalities. I heard you talk about group size as well, and the link between the group size and the different faces, and knowing that we needed to have X amount of groups to match back with the number of faces. That was something that we need to think about in terms of group size as well. I heard you talk about time and place as well in terms of the preparation and some of the things that needed to happen outside of the session before the actual session. And I heard you mention participant involvement in there as well, by giving them the choice of how they shared things back. You talked about some groups did very different things, but you gave them, what you did is empower them to decide. So empowerment is one of the moves on that scale, giving them the choice about how they want to share back the information, whether that is, they might do a skit, or they might do a drawing, or they might do different things, right? So kind of empowering them to do that. So that's participant involvement there. So I hear like 4 different dimensions at play in that example. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you.
Great. Linda, what about you? Let's hear from you, and then we'll kind of start to wrap things up and move to more Q&A.
Yeah, thank you. I think I really like this model and framework, because I go back and forth between being a facilitator and being a tech host for other facilitators. I rarely am both at the same time anymore in the virtual world. But I think as a facilitator, I've never taken and thought through as intentionally as I would now, the model of which dimensions I want to reinforce or bring into the facilitated sessions. And so this has been really, really helpful in kind of thinking through. And when I was in the group with Debbie and we were talking about the examples, I realized that the example that I gave was one that I facilitated, and I can back into which aspect of the model, but I didn't do it intentionally and deliberate up front. And so I love this idea. Thank you very much.
Oh, absolutely. And I would just like everybody to know that I didn't prime Linda to say that, but she took the words out of my mouth, because my sort of, like my big wrap up to this, and hopefully you see it, is that engagement isn't magic. It doesn't just happen. It can be intentional. You can actually think through these different dimensions, and by playing with the different ones and moving between and doing different things at different times, you can boost engagement in sessions. So it's not magical. It doesn't just happen. It isn't just the mystery. There is actually something behind it. And so that's what this model is trying to do, is kind of reveal that. So I didn't prime you, Linda, but thank you very much for staging that for me. That was beautiful. I appreciate it. So I'm just going to share with you, I just want you to know, I did promise you guys that we have some resources and stuff like that to share with you, and that is going to happen after the session. I will share a link to the document that you were working in today, so that you can see a lot of the other activities. We will share that. And then we also have another document that we're going to be sharing, and I'm just going to share my screen really quickly and show you that. We'll be sharing, can everybody see my screen okay? Yeah, great. We'll be sharing this document as well, which has, you see the model at the top, and again, you'll see each of the different dimensions with the description. And then we've been capturing what are the things that tech hosts actually do in each of those different dimensions. So what do they do to help boost that? So we will be sharing that with you as well at the end of today. And then just so you know, if you want to learn more about this model, I do have a course that I developed about this model, and there is a promo code for you if you're interested in this course. The promo code is in the chat that Heather has just shared. And it does go through sort of all of the different scales. So I just showed you 2 of the scales today, like group size and energy fields. It does show you all of the different scales behind each of the different of the 9 dimensions. And it gives you lots of tips and traps and tools and resources. I have a dashboard that you can use to plan sessions with each of the different dimensions, and lots of other great resources that are in there. So if you're interested, the link is in the chat, as well as the promo code for the discount. So just wanted to share all of that with you. And yeah, and please connect with me. I would love to connect with all of you. My LinkedIn is in the chat. My Instagram is in the chat. I share lots of great resources on Instagram as well, if you're on there. And then there's my website there as well. So I look forward to sort of connecting with everyone. So I just wanted to share that with you. And I would love to sort of open this up for lots of questions, and reflections, what else people have thought about. Yeah, Heather, go for it.
Yeah, I just want to cover a couple more things before we open it up to more questions, because this is also a Q&A time for our participants at Tech Host Academy. So I want to share a couple of things that are also coming up at Tech Host Academy, and then definitely want to hear everyone's Q&As. And we've got a little bit of time, so we'll take some time to do just that. I want to tell you what's coming up at Tech Host Academy. For those who are members of Tech Host Academy, and I will definitely give you also an opportunity to join if you want to join today, but our next live Q&A session is Thursday, October 20th, and we are going to be sandboxing. So what that means is you bring all of your questions. What are the things that you have wanted to try and break? Let's do it in this sandboxing session. So we do a little bit of sandboxing in our live Q&As every month, but this one is dedicated purely for sandboxing. So for those of you who dialed in to a bonus session that we had a few weeks ago about setting your Zoom settings, this is going to go even further. So this is where we get super tech heavy. And then definitely join us on November 3rd is our next Quest session like this. We bring in experts from the field, and we're going to be working on improv with Avril Orloff. And if any of you know her she's also a visual practitioner, facilitator. She creates and designs unique spaces for people to really collaborate together, and she'll be teaching us some improv techniques. And then also, in case you're interested, I am going to be giving a free session. It's being hosted by the IAF as part of Facilitation Week. That's Friday, October 21st. And I'm also going to make sure that all of that is in the chat as well. And if you're interested in joining Tech Host Academy, I do have a link that goes directly to the registration page. If you want more information before that, please feel free to email me directly. We're going to be following up over the next couple of days because we have so many resources to share. Some of you know that I get pretty generous with my information, and I've learned so does Tricia. So please feel free to email either of us. We'll be emailing you some additional free resources and what we've covered today. But now is a great time to open up the floor and see what other questions people have. I always wonder what's the uncomfortable silence link before an extrovert finally hits the unmute button. And I've always wanted to take a poll of how many tech hosts are introverts versus extroverts.
And facilitators.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, I know a lot of facilitators that are actually introverts. Yeah,
I would call myself one.
Linda's saying me. So what is it, Linda? Are you an introvert or an extrovert?
Oh, introvert, off the charts.
Me too.
Yeah. It's funny. My husband's an introvert, and he always laughs when I have this conversation because he says, no one that can get up in front of a room is an introvert. So
Oh yes, they can, but they hide and curl up in a little ball afterwards.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
It's fine. My husband and I are exactly opposite on the MBTI scale. Everything that I am, he's the complete opposite of me. So he's an E for sure.
that's great.
I used to give people tests in the Myers-Briggs, and I would say to them, well, you might come out as an introvert, but that doesn't mean you can't still sell cars, because I mean, that requires some extrovert energy, but you're going to have to nap a lot when you're done selling that car. This is where you prefer to be. And
Exactly.
I'm in the introvert category. But I do want to ask, or maybe it's because it's all of this is, there seems to be quite, it's getting older. I'm getting older. the link between facilitation and tech hosting seems to be getting closer and closer somehow, but not really. I'm trying to, I mean,
I can speak to that.
can you speak to that? Thank you.
Yeah.
You
So
would.
a lot of that, so I love to bring in facilitators to help us see how meetings are being designed and what kind of techniques they're using so that we as tech hosts can follow them. So many tech hosts may never want to be in a facilitation role, but many facilitators need to know a lot of tech hosting skills. So we're kind of a blended audience here. So that's what's happening. Facilitators absolutely need to know some tech hosting skills because sometimes they can do it all, but some of them also need to know what to hire for. And we as tech hosts definitely need to know how meetings are run. Now,
Okay.
online sessions are, when I say sessions, and I always say sessions because I want to make sure that we understand that sessions can be anything. And I think Tricia talked about this at the beginning. They can be presentations, they can be conferences, they can be anything that's being held online, and tech hosts can be utilized for any of those things. But we dive deep into facilitation so we as tech hosts can be valuable to those that are facilitating meetings. I have to tell you, as a visual practitioner and those in the room that are also graphic recorders, and especially graphic facilitators, we oftentimes can co-facilitate with facilitators, but graphic recorders can sometimes be seen as a threat or a distraction to facilitators who have not had an experience working with a graphic recorder before. And so the same thing can happen as a tech host. I can't tell you how many times I get facilitators that say to me, I don't need you. And I'm thinking, really? Are you sure? You may not need me, but you definitely need some kind of tech host in that capacity. So I hope that answers your question, Karen. And Tricia, I think we have a question in the chat.
Yeah, I see it. So I'll give you a few more details about the course. It is a self-paced online course. The link there will take you to the page that will tell you a whole lot more about it as well. I mean, it is designed to go through this model in its glorious detail that we have touched and scratched on today. So it will go through behind each one. And there are a lot of additional resources inside of there in terms of, like I said, that one of the big resources is actually a dashboard that I use and that I bring into Miro or Mural. And I use that in designing sessions. So actually plotting out sessions on the dashboard so I can see when I look at my whole session, how much am I focused in one particular dimension and am I flexing across the different dimensions and things like that. So it gives me a visual cue of that. So the course goes through each one of these 9 dimensions. It explains the dimension and the scale that's behind it, the moves that you can make along that scale. It gives you tips and traps of what to look out for and how to get started with each dimension as well. And then it showcases using the dashboard to plan sessions. And there are a number of other bonus sessions in there as well with other facilitators who have joined me to talk about topics that relate, like participant involvement or energy fields and how we use games to boost energy and different topics like that, for example. So that you can get the link to the webpage. And if you have any questions at all, you can reach out to me. And there's a fast action bonus if you do sign up that expires the end of tomorrow night, by the end of Friday. But there's also an additional discount code that will be coming to you in the emails that we send you in case you're not ready to sign up or you want to think about it, or maybe for another day, there'll be an additional discount code in there as well for everyone that's attended the session. Thanks for the question.
Excellent.
Yeah. What other questions do people have?
Questions, reflections?
I have a reflection. And I think like basically all the dimensions that you mentioned were like the goal is to have variation in it, right? So kind of like to have a varied, let's say, platter of activities that then kind of engages people and like stimulates different senses and experiences. So I'm just wondering, how do you frame that in terms of, you have 9 dimensions, so that's quite a lot, but do you aim for having variation in like all the 9 dimensions for a meeting, or do you have like certain dimensions that are kind of your go-to to build in a variation for a certain type of meeting? Maybe, I don't know, just your go-to strategies on that.
Yeah, that's such a great question. And again, I love that I haven't primed you and you've said the words out of my mouth, but variation is a spice of engagement, right? That is what we're after. The variation is what keeps people engaged and moving through the different dimensions. So that is so key, like you said. You know, you're making me think of other go-to ones. I mean, I think there are some that are easier than others to apply very quickly. Like I said, like group size and even thinking of energy and the VARC modalities are really quick and easy ones that you can draw on at any point in time to think about that variation and am I flexing in between those? I mean, a big thing that I think of when I'm using the model is how long is the session, right? Because it's how much can you do? There's no way that you're going to play with all of these in a 1 hour session, for example, you know, and you don't always have to play with all. You know, I've done sessions where, you know, when I reflect back on them, I'll say, well, I didn't really do anything in, you know, challenge levels. Maybe it wasn't appropriate to sort of push people into that space in that meeting. But I think looking at it beforehand is also its intentional choice around that. Like, I'm not going to do this, as opposed to kind of, you know, that it just didn't happen, for example, right? So, you know, if you're designing a 2-day session or if you're supporting a 2-day session, there's a ton of opportunity to get more creative and to bring many different dimensions in there. And I think knowing them and just flexing and playing with them also gets you to check on, am I only playing with 1 or 2? And am I staying? Because remember, you can play with 1 or 2, but then when you look at the scale inside of that dimension, am I only putting people in one place in that dimension? So for example, you might be using group size a lot, but you only might ever put people in pairs. And that's actually, you know, that's kind of not enough variation. So you want to be thinking about, okay, well, pairs, I was using pairs here, but now I need to use small groups here, and then I need to use individual here. So it's important to look at not only the dimension, but sort of the moves that you're making in the dimension inside to make sure that you're getting the variation. So it's a little bit of a long-winded answer. I mean, there are some that I think, to your question, Claudia, that are easier to play with, and you can do them more quickly to play with. And then there are some, it depends, I think, on the length of the session and how much time and how you're moving the group, right? The group dynamics that you're moving the group through over time. So some play more to that as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. Also, like, to kind of think about the it's like a 1 hour session. I don't need to go crazy like and have everything included. So it's also good to know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for the question.
What I love about the dimensions of engagement, and for those of you that follow the approach design that we use at Tech Host Academy, which is appreciative inquiry, is knowing the client's desired outcomes. You can pick and choose which dimensions are going to help you meet that particular desired outcome, right? So yeah, you don't have to do them all, but there might be some key ones that you consider are the most important for meeting the needs of that particular group.
Yeah, I love that reflection too, Heather, because, you know, sometimes knowing the culture of organizations as well, you might choose, you know, knowing the culture of the organization and sort of the moves that you can make, you might choose to intentionally play in a space where they're comfortable, or maybe to push them outside of that, right? So knowing some of that can help you make choices around the dimensions that you choose to play with, and the moves that you choose to make inside of that dimension as well.
Yep, absolutely. The two that come up for me, and I'd love to hear from all of you too, which are the ones that you feel that you're the strongest in, or that might be the most important? For me, thinking styles and VARC modalities is really important when you're wanting to engage a lot of diversity in conversation, right? So yeah, any of those really call out to you, either that you're strong at or that you think, oh, I need to focus on this one or learn more about? Yeah. Well, I understand if others need to drop off. Yeah, go ahead, Lynn.
I was gonna say, I really, the challenging levels, I'm I have a very strong personality, and I know, like, one of the things too, I'm also a big dude, and I call it passionate, but it comes off as very forceful. And it's something that I've been trying to work on probably for the last like 6 months, and it still comes up every now and then. And I really think, you know, that's what came up for me in the challenging levels, because not only thinking about that ahead of time, right? When you're planning, how am I going to be able to softly challenge people, which is the way I like to think about it, right? As opposed to aggressive. Although I don't feel like it's aggressive, I understand that it comes off as aggressive. Like, I totally own that, but it's like It's an interesting one for me.
Yeah, I love that. I love that reflection. That there's a personal style in the challenge levels that comes out. The thing that you make me think of as well, Len, is that we have a sort of a personal style when it comes to energy fields as well. Like some of us are, can live on that blue side of the energy, which is a more quiet, calm, and then some of us have this very high action, really bring the energy. And I've had people say things in sessions like, the high energy is just exhausting. I don't want to come into a session and have music going and video playing in the background, all that. They're like, it's too much. I don't want to do that. And that actually disengages me really quickly. And so knowing some of those things and knowing the impact on energy and how that impacts people personally is also something that you make me think of as you're sharing.
Yeah, and to your point, I've had people like, if you ever real quiet and tranquil or very blue, the red people will come in the room and be like, why are we so right? And it's interesting, you can't please everybody, so how do you find that happy medium, or at least like bring them in and say, can you try, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right, include everybody. Interesting.
Yeah, and I think it's about intentionally sort of doing, flexing between, so if you start with high energy, then moving quickly into maybe something that's much more calming and thoughtful and reflective, and then finding the balance in between. So if people aren't exhausted, it's because we can't sustain it for long periods of time, I love that reflection.
I'll tell you something that I've done as a facilitator. This might help. And maybe Tricia, you can tell me if there's any of the dimensions that I'm doing this in. And that is because I do talk about the balcony and the dance floor a lot of times. I actually was in a group where we had artists and board members. And so this was at an art center, and so you have the staff and some artists, and then you have these board members that are making some serious decisions and sort of guiding the group. But then you've got the artists that are on the ground doing the work. And I had someone who just wanted to come to consensus immediately and he finally said, "What are we doing here?" And to me as a facilitator, I said, this is a process question. He's uncomfortable because we haven't gotten where he wants to get yet, right? So people are like popcorn, they all pop it at different times. And I said, this is a great opportunity for me to show you the process, because I never want to give over the process to the group if they don't understand that I'm taking them through a process with intention. I'm happy to be transparent about it. And if we do need to make a course correction, then I'm open to that. So what I do is I just show them, in a meeting, here's what happens. Right now, we are diverging. We're sharing ideas, and I haven't heard from all of the artists and the creatives in the room yet. So this might be a good opportunity for those who haven't spoken yet to speak now, so that we can get to that place of convergence or to that place of consensus. So I'm just being totally honest with when they say we're not there yet. I just told them what I told you. People are like popcorn. Some people aren't there yet. So yeah. What do you think, Tricia?
Yeah, no, that's great. I mean, that's, group dynamics, right? In terms of everybody sort of moving through that. I mean, if I try and think about that through the lens of the 9 dimensions, the ones that pop up for me are somewhat the instruction complexity, in the sense of making the whole thing. So in other words, you're giving small instructions for small pieces at times, and we're that's in the control space and layering it on, and that you're moving people through. But then some people want to see the whole picture, which is the opposite end of the scale, and kind of knowing the process that's happening, right? But sometimes, like you and I will know, is like, if you share that causes confusion for a lot of people, like this is what's going to happen. So it's the kind of the balance on that. The other one that comes up for me in your example is also challenge levels, because in the challenge levels, what you're thinking about is applying existing sort of situations and skills and questions to different situations, to either familiar situations or unknown situations. And what you're doing is you're moving the group through the known space. So sort of thinking about the skills and the information that we have in a known situation, and then starting to apply that to somewhere that we don't know, right? So we're more into the discovery space. And so they're sort of moving through the challenge levels, but they don't know that they're moving through the challenge levels. And I think some of that, so it's how explicit you need to make some of it to the group is what comes up for me.
Excellent. Thank you. Anyone else from the group here today have any suggestions? Jenny.
I don't have a suggestion. I just have a quick question.
Yeah.
So Heather, as you're building out the Tech Host Academy, are you also building out a directory of tech hosts?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We have 3 recent graduates, and a
Okay.
few other people that helped me build Tech Host Academy that I also have in the directory as well. And yeah, excellent question. Are you interested in that? Do you need a tech host, or are you interested
Lost
in
mine. Yep. So I'm
you
looking-
lost yours? Oh no.
Just lost mine. She took a full-time role, which is great. I'm thrilled for her, but she was excellent. And I find myself doing lots of hybrid meetings now.
Yes.
And you cannot do a hybrid meeting successfully without a tech host.
Thank you very much for saying that. If any of you are fans of Priya Parker, she says that when you plan a meeting, a hybrid meeting, you're actually planning 3 meetings. And so now when people ask me about hybrid, I always say you need at least 2 tech hosts, one that's actually in the virtual room on Zoom and one that's in the actual room, that those 2 people work lockstep together. And so that to make sure that we're doing that. My very first hybrid meeting I had, I thought, well, I can handle this. We had 2 facilitators in the room, and I kept my eye on the on what was happening virtually, and we still missed things. So yeah, absolutely. Any other questions about hybrid?
Hybrid is hard.
I
I know
clarification.
Hybrid is an
also-
adventure.
Hybrid is really worth it. So when I'm moving the needle most with companies now, it's because we're doing a hybrid meeting, but it goes to time and place. There are only certain things, certain types of meetings that are really successful in hybrid format from my perspective. So, but yeah, I mean, we're never going back. So let's all learn how to go forward together in a way that makes our meetings just completely valuable for clients. Yeah, because they cannot do hybrid by themselves. Listen to us talk about you need 2 hosts and you need this, and you know, it's not just getting everybody together and having a meeting. So yeah. So anyway, thanks. I'm just going to say into the air, it was an excellent session. I'm so glad I attended. I jealously guarded this time so that I could be here, and it was totally worth my time.
Oh, thank you.
Tricia, thank you so much for sharing your dimensions of engagement. What a great model.
Thank you.
And Lisa, if you're still here, thank you for being my breakout partner. That was a really great breakout, and I super enjoyed myself. So I look forward to seeing you all in the future, and I'm going to drop off here.
Thank you. And Jenny, keep an eye on your email because there's lots of great resources coming to you. We like to share stuff.
Thanks so much.
Yeah.
Bye for now.
Bye.
Thank you so much. I'm just going to share my screen really quick. I got this private message, which my rule is make sure that it's all to everyone, but I can see where someone might have thought, maybe she'll give me a backdoor into Tech Host Academy, but I am going to give you just a really quick sneak peek in the back end of Tech Host Academy and some of these sessions. This isn't pretty. This is just these are the list of some of the past classes that are now archived that you would have access to. Someone was asking about that. The relationship with tech hosts and facilitation. That was back in June. We talked about roles as a tech host, from team building to etiquette. And I discuss how we as tech hosts work with different types of people. I also cover marketing, selling your tech hosting services. We have a big session on your up your tech hosting aptitude. This is something that we're always working on. And we started out the very first part of the year envisioning your learning journey. So we create a map of how we want to be able to do this. And I get to know you through these sessions in order to help you when you do graduate and get on the directory, to help you get the kind of work you need. Everything from tech hosts that have joined that are doing work with calligraphy guilds, and maybe they just want to stay there, to those who want to branch out into more corporate work, to those who are already facilitators and they want to meet up with other tech hosts and maybe build a team. And then, of course, in our quest sessions, this is where we have our experts. Muddy Schlegel, for those of you who don't know, Muddy Schlegel is our tech guy, and he's also an expert in hybrid. Lauren Green is also an expert in hybrid. She takes us through some scenarios. Brian Tarallo, the award-winning author of Surviving the Horror of Online Meetings. He's with us, and he gave a wonderful session last time on really meeting structure. So that might be, Karen, why you're feeling that this is a lot about facilitation. We talked about polyvagal theory with Rafalina. Now, polyvagal theory is really touching on how, as we, as tech hosts, can work on our presence and to maintain equanimity. Carolyn talked about conversations that count. So again, introduced a new model about how do we have these conversations with our clients to ensure that we're showing our value. And then Zandra talked about, she's a super tech savvy. If any of you know Zandra Dirks from Germany, we call her Zandra Digital Dame Dirks. She has a gazillion different cameras and some that she can control using hand movements, almost like sign language. How do we as tech hosts support her? And then back again, more visual presentation tools with Muddy. Actually, that was a draft. That's something that's going to be coming to all of you pretty soon. So that's a little bit of a back end of what you're going to get in addition to just the lessons that you go through to become a tech host. So that's enough for me to say. Any more questions for Tricia or I? You've all been so graceful and engaged. I appreciate
Real quick,
that.
just, Heather, is that self-paced? That host?
So the lessons, you immediately get access to 10 lessons that are self-paced. And then every month we have 2 live sessions, one with an expert like Tricia and one with me where I dive in deeper as a practice to tech host. That's something you can attend live or you can watch the videos. So it can be completely self-paced. Some of my tech hosts have taken a week off and gone through everything and finished it just in a week. And I have some tech hosts that are still working on it and just going through it as they need. But those 10 lessons give you everything you need to be a tech host in the way that my approach in doing that gives you the presence, the approach design, and the tech mastery. And the tech mastery really happens when you're on the job putting this to practice. I had one student ask me one time, where do we go to find all the technical information that we need? And I said, well, we can't boil the ocean here. You can't possibly know. So there's a lot of just-in-time learning and you have access to me. So I get a lot of people in the program asking questions between those sessions. But every 2 weeks, a live session like this is really plenty to be able to answer those questions. Thanks for asking, Lynn. Anything else? I am just thrilled of the great information that Tricia shared with us today. Thank you so much, Tricia. I like to do shaky jazz hands as applause for being here. And I love always working with you. And I'm so glad that I got to share her wisdom with all of you today. So thanks so much, everyone, for joining in.
Yeah, big thank you. Thank you so much for taking your time to join today and to explore this. I look forward to connecting with everyone, to sharing lots of resources, to hearing from you, answering questions. Please reach out. And, I'm just on the other end of the email. So please feel free to reach out anytime. It's been great. I'm so appreciative of your time. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.